It's time for Ask Mike Mondays. Mike answers one listener's question every week. Here's Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to Ask Mike Mondays. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. And joining me today, the governor, the mayor of Beckerville, USA, Mr. Michael Becker.
Hey, Paul.
Michael owns so much real estate here in the state of Texas that he should be called the governor. Do they pick you up in a limousine these days?
Well, like I said, no. The more taxes you pay, the worse they treat you in this world. Seemingly, that's my experience at least.
They would pick you up, but they would pick you up in a Yugo.
That's right, and charge me for it too, I'm sure.
So Michael, who and his group over at SPI own over $670 million in apartments.
Well, the way these prices keep going up, the assets under management keep going up too. So who knows?
Michael, who has closed over $1 billion in apartment loans. Now you've sold a couple of these, right?
Yeah. So I think we're about 650, 700, 650 to 675 in assets under management. And as we talked today, we're about 5,300 units in the portfolio today, and we've done over 7,500. So we've been busy little boys over the last several years.
Tell me what you've closed in the last month or two.
I guess with this releases, we had just closed a 240 unit deal in the Galleria with a client of ours. May, we bought 530 units, a deal in Austin, a deal in Fort Worth. And in July, we're going to have a 228 unit deal that closes at the end of July, both in Arlington, and then we have one in a little small deal in Tyler, and then we're selling a deal. And so, yeah, we've actually been pretty active right now. It's been feel very fortunate to have a good economy out there right now.
You are a beehive of activity going on these days. Go back real quick here because you mentioned something about buying a property with a client over at the Galleria. What was that all about? Yeah,
so we actually, it's a funny story. We had one of our longtime investors referred us to one of his buddies, and they happened to have a movie studio in California they sold for like a fortune, like 9 figures, and they owned it free and clear. So they ended up buying several large trophy properties out in California, kind of free and clear because they had some complicated 1031. And then subsequent, once the property closed, they put some debt on it. And they took that cash out, and we're actually helping them, hopefully buy 3 to 4 properties in Texas and do some value add strategy. So that's kind of what we're in the middle of working through that assignment. So we have got the first one down, and we got a few more to go, hopefully, before the year's over.
So they came to you because SPI provides advisory service, and they had the money, and they wanted it to be put into real estate outside of California.
I think they realized when they bought 3 properties, they didn't know what the hell they were doing, and they need some professional help to make sure they don't make similar mistakes. I think they paid some pretty good numbers for the deals they had. And what we're going to talk about here, I think, on this podcast, is a relationship business. It's we mentioned on the last one, there's something about book knowledge, and these guys are super, super intelligent, very smart guys. There's a difference between book knowledge and seat knowledge, right? And just kind of having the experience and the relationship and, having a kind of a feel to navigate the business. There's no textbook that tells you how to do this. You kind of got to figure it out along the way, and you could have good mentors, but, nothing's more valuable than a lot of experience.
So in the podcast today, we're going to ask Mike the question, but it's kind of this is a multiple podcast to ask Mike these questions because the original podcast that came out last week was help. I'm super motivated by you to buy apartments. What are the steps to buy apartments? In the last one, we talked about getting education, is getting educated in the multifamily business, kind of know what the hell you're talking about. You can't ask for people's money unless you kind of know what the hell you're talking about yourself. So just to know the basics. What is NOI? What's a cap rate? Where should we invest in? Should I buy 50 units? You got to define what the heck you want to buy. If you say I'm going to buy anything that's multifamily, you're going to wind up all over the place. So you got to define a little bit of exactly what you're going to do. So in this podcast under help, I'll say help, podcast number 2 in our series is find a broker, find the property. So Mike, how do I find a broker? Yeah,
I think when you're starting out, the brokers, the one thing you got to realize is different than kind of the single family space. When a lot of people start the single family and transition up into, larger scale things. And, a lot of people that I kind of talk to that are trying to figure out how to get in the business are, they're used to sending out yellow letters to, Mr. House Owner and can I buy it off market direct? And you try to do all these little gimmicks, and that just doesn't, that works in the single family space. And that just really doesn't work in the multifamily
Have
space.
you gotten one of those Dear
Yeah.
Mr. SBI LLC?
That's right. Yeah. Dear Mr. SBI LLC, I want to buy your 400 unit apartment complex. And I have cash to close, and like it just doesn't, that might work on a 12-plex or an 8-plex or someone unsophisticated, but you start getting in the 100+ unit scale, to pull that off a multi-million-dollar transaction, you have to have a certain level of sophistication. So, that's just not a proper tax. So really the brokers control most of the deals, and not saying all the deals you can't do a deal without a broker. It's just more challenging, and the brokers can, like I said, control the deals, whether they're marketed or off market. So what you really need to do is just focus on forming good relationships with these brokers. So how do you even start about going about that? If I've never done anything, how do I get the broker taking me seriously? That's really kind of a big paradigm you got to kind of break for a lot of people. Really a couple things around that topic. I mean, the first and foremost, you got to go where the brokers are, So if you get educated, that's the first thing you should do. So you need to have a basic level of education so you can at least talk in jargon and be taken seriously. Because if you go to a broker and you don't know the basics of the business, you're going to be, sniffed out as a fraud, because that's what you are. You don't know what you're doing. So it's counterproductive. So you only get the, one chance to make a first impression. So make sure you get the education. Then that's when you're really starting to go have conversations with these brokers. So, really, you can go into one of the things we've mentioned many times on here is go to the conferences, go where the brokers are at. So go, Marcus and Millichap, for example, will do these major conferences in all the big cities across the country, and they'll have the state of the multifamily market in Houston and New York and Atlanta and Dallas, and so just go to that and pay $300, go to it, and every broker that's at Marcus and Millichap in that market will be there, so you have the opportunity to go meet them and put a face with a name. One of the things I think you just should certainly do is get on all the lists, so that's not like an MLS. You need to get on the broker's list, so then you get on their distribution list. So CBRE and Marcus Millichap and, HFF and all these big broker shops will send out their listings. So, you need to make sure that you're on there, you're seeing them. If it looks interesting to you, reach out to them, set up a tour, take the time to actually download the package, underwrite the deal, make sure, you have very specific and, well thought out questions and, be respectful of their time and, follow up with them. One of the things that I think really pisses off brokers, they take the time to send you something and then spend all this time with you and then you go dark on them. So you need to make sure that you have a well-reasoned, thought out, response to them. So even if the thing is, it's not a fit for me, give them specific feedback. That's not a fit because of X, Y, and Z, or I don't know if I can perform at the same rental rate growth that you're performing, and something like that. So be very specific in the level of feedback with them, and that's well received by them. And then just going out and going into other events where these guys are at too, and like the Old Capital puts on these speaker series, particularly in the spring and in the fall. So go to the Old Capital Conference. There'll be a bunch of brokers there. That's a good place to kind of meet and interact with them. And then if you don't have a lot of track record, find a way to mitigate the lack of a track record that you have. So there's a couple ways of doing that. It's a team sport like we talk about. So, leverage the management company that's going to manage it. So reference, the management company that manages a similar type of product in that region. You don't want to hire Graystar to manage a 40-unit deal in Garland, Texas. You'd hire, someone like Ryan Wayner would manage something like that. So, he's a vendor that's been on our podcast before and he manages a lot of that. So try to, drop his name. He's going to manage it. Paul Peoples has underwritten me and he says I can qualify for a loan up to X amount of dollars. So, kind of drop names of the reputable vendors that can kind of transfer the credibility from them to you. Because the brokers in town know who the players are. They know who manages stuff. They know who's doing debt on it. So those are good ways to kind of mention people like that and kind of transfer credibility. Also, if you co-sponsor with someone that's done a couple deals before, you've done none, and you're sponsoring with someone that has a successful track record in that area that you're looking to buy, that's also a good way of kind of breaking through and getting a little better relationship with these brokers. And then finally, one of this kind of real simple thing, a kind of a tip I like to give is just don't be a jerk. That'll go a long way in this business. If you're difficult to deal with and you're rude and, disrespectful to people and you don't show up on time and you don't do what you say you're going to do, I can promise you're going to have a lot harder time buying a deal than if you're just generally polite and become friends with these brokers. A lot of the brokers in town, I considered, that we're friends. I had dinner last night with one of them and, we go to drinks with a whole bunch of them. And, earlier this week I had drinks with two different brokers and dinner last night with another one. So we're constantly out there and, we'll talk a little bit of business, but it's mainly just us kind of BSing and, because we're genuinely friends. So if you get yourself in that position, trust me, you're going to get in a situation where it's going to come down to this seller selling a deal to you or somebody else. And then if that broker's in there advocating for you over the other person, you're going to have that little soft edge that you can get something awarded to you that if you didn't have that little soft edge, you wouldn't win the deal.
Talk a little bit about, relationships with the brokers. This is an interesting business. A lot of these brokers have different places that they go to hang out at after work.
Yep.
And I don't know if I can ask you this question, Mike, but what favorite place do you hang out with that somebody can buy you a beer?
Yeah, I'm going to say I feel fortunate that where we office, I can't go to lunch without running into somebody I know, because I'm in the Preston Center development in North Dallas, and there's 4 or 5, brokers that are major broker shops that are within a, walking distance of my office. So I can't go to lunch without running into somebody, or the appraiser, or the banker, or whoever. There's a bunch of people here. So on the way home, there between my house and here, there's a local dive bar called the Inwood Tavern, and I'm telling you, you go in there's more real estate guys hang out at like little rich guy dive bar than almost any other place. So
see, that's my point.
Yeah.
Is go find out where the brokers in the capital are at. They're not in the country clubs; they're at the dive bars
or the country club. I mean, that's just not my thing,
too.
but there's a lot of guys that are members at country clubs as well. But you just gotta take it and get to a personal level with these people, and if you can do that successfully, you're going to increase your effectiveness.
Also, people don't realize how small this community is, and people think it is just huge. Because if you take residential lending, residential brokers, that if you go from Denton, which is the far north part of Dallas, you go all the way down to Hillsborough, very, very far south, go out to Weatherford. On the west side, you go east towards Rockwall. There's maybe 50,000 residential realtors in that space, 50,000 that are trying to sell you a house. In the multifamily side, I think you'd be challenged to find 18.
Yeah, there's probably
18, not 18,000, but 18.
Yeah.
So it's a very small community, and those are the producers. There may be a total of 50 or 60 of apartment brokers, but the 18 are the ones who kind of run and control the business. So you got to get to know those folks. And how do you do it? You come to Texas, and you come and sit down and have an appointment with them and visit with them. Share, break some bread over at Starbucks. Bring them out for a Starbucks. Bring them out for lunch. Get to know them. Spend some time with them. Come meet the lender in the area. Now, if you're looking to go to Phoenix or go out to Atlanta, put a call into the lender in that area that you want to do. Hopefully it's Old Capital, but go take a look talk to the lender in Phoenix that kind of knows some of the brokers that can introduce you. Do an intro. I just did one this morning. John, meet Jacob. Jacob, meet John. And, I give a little background on both you guys and say, hey, get together and talk. And that goes a long way when you have a personal introduction from your banker to somebody that we've done business with in the past to the broker. So I think, that is one way to kind of do a soft in-your-face introduction for the major brokers out there that may not take your call, but kind of work your way up like a salmon up the river to get to these major brokers to have them have some time and spend some time with you. So come to Texas and get to know us, and hopefully we can help you get those relationships with the brokers out there. Michael, what is going on in the SPI world these days?
Oh, just like I said, we've been busy little boys out there trying to take over the world. So if people want to find out more information about us or potentially work with us, really I just encourage you guys to go to company's website. It's the best way to find out more information about us. So just go to www.spiadvisor.com. That's SPI like spy advisor.com. There's a contact us form. You fill that out. I'm always happy to have a 10 to 15 minute telephone call with listeners we meet off of the podcast.
Sounds great. And don't forget, go to oldcapitalpodcast.com. And if you have a question for Michael, we're going through our series right now. If you have a question, ask Michael the question. We'll make sure that gets on the air. And then don't forget to leave a 5-star rating on iTunes for the Old Capital Podcast. We appreciate that. Michael, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. I'm Paul Peebles. Have a great day.